still have, there's a couple of interesting things about that. The family, Doug Main is the guy who moved it there. He bought it. And Doug Main went to that school when it was way up by where St. Pius X is. And Doug Main, I guess, loved it. There's actually, I have a copy of an article from the Norwalk Hour in 1910 or something, saying that Doug Main had perfect attendance. He was the only one in Scotland school with perfect attendance. And anyway, he bought it after it closed in around 29, 30. They moved it to the town farm across the street. And then he brought it down. The family still has the blackboards, and they have not erased them. So there's writing on the blackboards that's almost a century old. And they still have the school bell. They took the bell and mounted it separately on their property.
I've seen the
see
bell.
it from the road.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. You could, when you go by, I think you can see the bell back near Stephen's house.
Nobody realizes that's a school.
No.
Just,
Is that the red house or is that the
Yellow.
yellow house?
The yellow house.
yeah.
Got it.
Wow.
You know George
Have the Wilsons lived there for years.
North
Chauncey
Stanley.
Wilson, that was the
I
name
have a
of
story about Titica's school. An old-time Ridgefielder, Fabio Biagiotti, has told this story over and over again for years, and it's just a funny story. It's probably gotten a little embellished over the years, but anyway. He went to the Titica school, and there was a teacher at the Titica school named Miss Nicholas. As a matter of fact, she ended up teaching when we were in elementary school. And there was an outhouse there. Well, somehow Miss Nicholas got locked in the outhouse.
Oh, no.
And it was a padlock on the outside. I don't know how this all happened. But they needed to and the only key was in the town hall. So the way Fabio tells the story is, this is an exact quote, they picked the two most responsible children in the school, me being one of them, he says, and they told us to run uptown to the town hall and get the keys so we could get Miss Nicholas out of the outhouse. And then he says, and I don't remember who the other person was with him, but we go running up the hill, and we decide, we get to Joe's store on the corner there, we're going to stop and have a soda and a little snack.
Of course.
And then keep moving on to the town hall. So eventually they get to the town hall, they get to the key, they get the key, probably stop again on the way back, he'd say. And they let Miss Nicholas out of the outhouse. So if you know Fabio, you know that he's a great storyteller, and I've heard this so many times. It just really needs to be recorded.
Yes,
That's amazing.
Did they find out who locked her in there?
No.
They
It could have been the most responsible student in the world. Who knows?
That school had outhouses until it closed
Really?
in 1939.
Wow.
Branchville too. That's amazing to consider.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing to hear the evolution of classrooms and the technology that's taken place in these one-room schoolhouses and indoor plumbing. It's just incredible.
Most of them didn't have running water.
Yeah.
Really?
The kids would have to take a pail and go to a nearby house to get the water for the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And they all drank out of the same bucket with the same dipper. How about hand washing?
What? And survived.
They had very good immune systems in those days.
They were,
No, I just
everything was dirty then.
Yeah.
They walked to school in dirt and they walked home in dirt.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was nothing was paved or sanitized.
Sure.
And a lot of that dirt had more than just dirt in it because of the horses and cows and everything else. You can imagine what the schoolhouse floors look like.
Oh, yeah.
Who owns the Branchville School?
Town.
Our town.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Working on it.
We're working on it. The Historical Society's attempting to get grants for it, but we have to get some agreements with the town first.
Okay.
Is it being protected with tarps or anything? No?
No,
It has, the roof is in, I guess, fairly good shape.
No, the roof is leaking.
But
I
it's
thought
leaking.
they were gonna do
Around the
something with
chimney.
that. Didn't they put something up there?
I don't
No?
know. No,
I
that
I
needed to be
remember
done.
going there as a child,
I
because
was,
I live
well,
on Branchville
Tracy.
Road. And I remember going there as a child to see Santa Claus.
The Branchville Civic
right.
Association.
Yes. We used to
Right?
do
Yeah.
Christmas there. And I remember going.
That was their clubhouse.
It looks
Yeah.
big. Looks like a big one.
I remember going there, I don't remember the inside or all too up there.
That school was built to what was then very modern standards. It was taller, so it would have more ventilation than schools like West Lane or Scotland, or which were, and West Mountain was a horrible school. It was one of the smallest of the small, and so it had more ventilation. It had windows that were almost as tall as the front door to let in as much light as possible. So it was it originally had two doors on the front, one for boys and one for girls, because they believed they went through a phase where people believed that girls and boys should be separated as much as possible, even entering and leaving school via separate doors.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So when was that built?
That was in the early 1870s, that building was built. Replacing.
It still
earlier
has the
schools.
blackboards too in there.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of original stuff in there that would really be nice to have.
Speaking about houses, this is more recent. Tracy, who's the president here, said to me that on every agenda there it says PPPP, and that's Porta Potty Peter Parley. And they've been working on that, and I think it's finally functioning.
Oh, yeah, we got it this spring. It's very exciting.
A modern outhouse.
Well,
Right.
yeah, actually.
Right.
Where did they put it?
There's a shed on the west side of the building. You hardly notice that it's painted the same color as the schoolhouse and kind of under trees. But now we can have third grade classes come from Farmingville School, which Darla taught. Darla and B.G. Brown gave a 2 hour, right, 2 hours? Was it?
Sometimes 2.5 when the bus didn't go.
Yeah, that's right. For third grades from Farmingville, and taught them as if they were in the 1820s. It was great fun. The kids were really interested.
That's
Terrific.
But one thing I think is important to bring out too is, and this was not true when I taught in the school system, today the teachers are only allowed 2 field trips. That's it. And so it's really limiting, and even if it's local, that's a field trip. So that's why it's hard, to get students, because it's much easier for the teachers to also go to Keeler Tavern as one of their field trips, as opposed to an interactive program as a third grader at Peter Parley.
Why do they have that limitation?
What?
Why do they have?
I don't know, I guess, I don't know, budget time-wise, mastery test standards.
Can't be too expensive to go to the Keeler Tavern or the West Lane Schoolhouse. Not like going to the Bronx Zoo or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's when I said, why haven't we had more students? They said we're limited to 2 a year. And, speaking of that, I contacted a number of teachers that I'm in touch with, and one of the people was Geraldine McNamara, and she talked about field trips. And she said that they used to do the river walk, and they love the river walk. The students learn so much. That is not one that they do anymore. She also said they would go to the Noah Webster House and that each student would do individual research and come back and present. And this was something they really look forward to, which they don't do anymore. And I think this is so sad that the schools used to celebrate Connecticut History Day, which is in May, which the students would come up with various projects as a group or with their parents, and there was a presentation for fourth grade because Ridgefield history was third and this was fourth, and that's no longer done today. So things have switched. It's much more STEM and technology and looking for scores and standards and all, so the schools are very different.
I know they're always trying to, like from going to school board meetings, that they were always trying to jam more in.
Right.
Like they had these standards and there was way more, in what the curriculum was supposed to cover than they actually could cover. And I mean, my own memory of history classes, they never seem to get past the Pilgrims, it's like,
That's right.
every year you get like colonies and pilgrims and you never got to like the Civil War or,
No, you're right, we didn't either.
I mean, that's the old,
I don't think they teach much of anything about Ridgefield history nowadays.
They used to, when my kids
They
were in
didn't back then
elementary,
either,
they did.
Jack,
Well,
when
they
we
in
went
the-
to school.
They had that
90s.
nice book that
Well,
Joe
we-
Laney's brother wrote, and Bob Tulipani wrote with him, I think.
Yeah.
That was like a history of the town for third or fourth graders. But
They don't teach that
I don't think there's anything like that anymore. I don't think, like black history in the high school, they just try to, I don't think many kids in town realize that we had, 60, 70 enslaved people living in town.
That's right.
Well, that's changing now with the Witness Stones project.
Right, that's great, yeah.
We had 5 in this house. 5 enslaved people,
Well, we were talking about Bob Tulipani, and Joe Laney and Bob Tulipani put together a wonderful booklet on Ridgefield history, and the students, it was written on their level to their interest, and for many years that was used, and that is no longer used, which is sad.
Betsy, do we have a copy of that, do you think?
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
I just saw, I don't know if Jackie put this up, that Farmingville had a booklet, 16 pages of the history of Farmingville.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
They did a nice job on that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful job.
Some of these elementary schools, quite a few are more than a half century old. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that. They all seem new when I came here, but
How old is the
That-
new high school?
in
50
fact,
years.
the newest school in town is a half century old,
1972 was when the new high school.
except for Scotch
was
Ridge.
built.
Patsy, did you graduate from the new high
No,
school?
our class was the last at the old high school.
Oh,
Okay.
So that was
72.
72, and then the next class went up there.
I was in the class of 75, and I never had the chance to go to the old high school, which I still am feeling very upset that I
Yeah,
never
it was
got to
great.
go there.
It was a great building.
Yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
good memories there.
Yep.
does anyone believe this was a rumor when we were kids, that the reason they put the new high school way out in North Salem Road was they didn't want because the kids used to get out of school and walk downtown and hang around.
Which made sense, though, they had jobs.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it made a lot of sense, yeah.
But wasn't
But
it,
the main reason it went out there, I
Didn't they
think,
have
is
a
because
bungalow?
Land.
Didn't
they had cheap
Yeah,
land
okay.
that they could build on.
well, didn't Miss Richardson donate some
Yeah,
land
she
too?
It wasn't donated, but it was very cheap.
Oh,
It was
I
cheap.
think it was $50,000 for 20 acres or something like that.
because I remember our mother was so upset that with kids with after-school jobs or religious class afterward or how,
Yeah.
because we all walked down the hill
Downtown.
and went, you know, began our after.
They had a vote on that in 1968, whether to build out there or on the ridge, you know, expand the existing high school, and by 33 votes,
It lost.
yeah, or 63. People, you know, this was thousands of voters came out. This was a big deal back then.
Well, it was one of the hottest issues
It
I can
was.
remember.
It was.
Remember, yeah.
I could just imagine if you lived down in Georgetown in Branchville, and then you had to go from there all the way to
Yeah.
almost
Almost
north
to
of
North
Salem.
Practically
Yeah.
north
Yeah,
side.
right on the
That's what my
border.
kids did.
Yeah.
They both went to Branchville and went all the way to the high school.
That's,
Yeah.
that would
That's
be
crazy.
a reason just in itself.
Although I gotta, you know, kids on Silver Spring Road, you know, right next to the New York State line, go to Branchville School, which is right next to Reading.
Yeah.
And there's no easy way to go from Lower Silver Spring Road to,
Right.
you know, Georgetown, Branchville.
Yeah.
And
Well, back in the 60s, mid-60s is when the population of Ridgefield was really booming, and they built Barlow Mountain, Scotland, the Branchville School,
Yeah.
and the high school.
Yeah, Veterans Park was in the mid-50s.
Right.
The junior high, middle school over here was 66.
Junior high,
This
East
one here.
East Ridge?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was in the first class that graduated from there.
All right.
Yeah. In fact, the first year, we moved here in '66. That was the first year East Ridge opened. And then it was 9 through 12 were actually at the high school then, so 8th grade was the highest grade. And then they changed it to next year, so we stayed there another year. And so 9th grade through, or at East Ridge, and then 10th through 12 through the high school, and then it stayed that way for a long time.
right. We were the first sophomore class at the new high school. So we had 7, 8, and 9 at East Ridge, and then went to the high school after that.
Yeah.
So,
So you can always tell an old Ridgefielder from a new Ridgefielder because they still refer to the high school as the new high school.
exactly.
50 years later, or whatever it is.
That's true.
Yeah, I had a student tell me that the only two good things about the high school being out where it was is that if it was hot, you go across to Richardson Park and jump off the cliffs into Mamanasco, or you could go to Peach Lake
Right.
for lunch. So that was the only good thing about the new high school.
Or
What?
a drink.
Yeah.
They were 18.
In Peach Lake, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize, I didn't hear about that.
That was back in the day when the drinking age was
Ah,
18 in Connecticut.
so it was more than just lunch, okay.
It's 18
Yeah,
in
it
New
was
York
18 in New York
and
and
21
21 in
in
Connecticut.
There was also a smoking lounge at the high school.
Yes,
Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
A smoking lounge for
Wow.
children?
For high
Yeah.
school
High
students?
school, yeah.
Yes.
We
Yes.
had a, yeah.
It was to get the kids out of the high school
Get
so
them
they
out of the
wouldn't smoke
bathrooms.
In the
in
bathroom.
the bathrooms.
How long did that last? Do you know?
That until 2000, probably late 90s, I'm guessing.
That's unbelievable.
Because 2002 is when the new addition
Right.
on the high school was built, and it took away the smoking lounge area.
It was earlier. I can remember
There was a
because our
smoking
younger
lounge,
son
yeah.
used to get nailed for smoking.
Uh-huh.
You know, like in the entryway or something. And I think the penalties went up to like 2 weeks of in-school suspension or out of, yeah, he missed a lot of
I think that's
school.
why they had the lounge, was it just was so hard to enforce
Right.
no smoking.
Yeah.
It just, like, not worth the
Yeah.
trouble, let's let them just give them a place to do it outside and.
Let them die.
Right.
Luckily, I didn't smoke, so I never had those kinds of
It's a whole
penalties.
different group, right?
Yeah.
Also, when East Ridge opened, the building opened, it was Scotland School was there as well, in double shifts.
Mhm.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and so my sister was 3 years younger than me, and so she was going in the second shift. So she wouldn't get home till like 4 or 4:30 in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
we had double sessions.
We had that.
Yeah.
I remember
We
that.
had that. Way back.
But remember, we older ones remember Kip Holleran's office, the principal's office, and there was the faculty lounge, and then occasionally that door would open, of course, and we would just roar because the smoke would be just.
Yeah. Well, I remember going up the hill with the other people are coming down the hill with the kids would, because of double sessions, you'd have your, your main classes at Veterans Park School, and then you'd walk up the hill past where the boys club is to the old high school for your art and music and that stuff.
Wow.
And the other kids were coming the other
Oh,
way.
really? You went
Yeah.
back and forth?
Yeah, we would walk
Wow.
in the middle of the day. You'd
I
switch.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I was like 5th or 6th graders. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Because there was all kinds of, they were opening new schools and a lot of double sessions.
Well, speaking of the new old high school, I met with Hal Healy a couple months ago. I didn't know he was going to be saying anything here, and he's at Ridgefield Crossing. He was the principal at Ridgefield High School for I think 16
When I-
years.
Yeah, when I was there.
Yeah. And he's going to be 101 if he's not 101 now. He is sharp, he's funny, he is on a cane, he's very active, he's running all these bridge groups. And we talked, and it was interesting because I'd worked as an acting assistant principal under him. And he talked about he still has nightmares at night about the controversies that took place at the high school. And there's so much controversy going on now in politics and all, but he said the worst one was, I don't know the year, when Johnny Nimmo streaked through the high school on his motorcycle.
That was in the late 70s.
And he said, someone could have gotten killed. He said, everyone thinks that's a great story and that's so funny. And he says, not if you're the principal.
Well, I heard that Hal Healy went into the hallway to try to stop him and went to try to grab the motorcycle, which would have caused even more damage, but he wanted to get him out.
Yeah. He also, remembered, and I don't remember all the details on all these, but there was a mural of Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, yeah.
And the Jimi Hendrix mural.
That's at the new high school.
What?
That's at the current high school.
That
mural
was at the current high school, not
The current.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, these are all, Hal Healy these were current. These were all current. He also remembers that Bob Cox, speaking of favorite teachers, I have interviewed so many people. Bob Cox comes up in every single interview as being remembered. And he's also remembered for fighting for Soul on Ice and for fighting for Lodestar, the literary magazine, and really standing up for so many different things. And then I didn't remember that much. There was something that came up about Dirk Ballenbeck, who was another very, very beloved teacher, who was accused of being a communist at some point.
No,
And then
Well, just
stop, any of these stop me.
Just you brought up Dirk Bolenbach and Bob Cox. In our faculty meetings in the cafeteria, the two of them, they loved each other. They got along very well, but they would always have these arguments across the cafeteria. One being more,
Dirk was a Republican and
and Bob was Democrat, right. I was trying to figure out how to say that nicely. But they were great friends, and but it was always everybody, all the teachers, staff wanted to be at the faculty meetings just to see what the story was going to be that was going to happen.
And as an
Bob Cox,
assistant,
by the way, lives right behind us, right up there.
I'm picking him up at the airport at 4 o'clock today.
Oh, he's coming back today?
Yeah.
who's this?
Bob,
Okay.
with Kathy Wassel.
but Kathy Wassel, oh my goodness, she taught so many people to write. And I remember, I think it was Mark Salzman and Todd Brewster and the speechwriter for Obama and Brad Parks, and all these people attributed the beginning of their writing skills to Kathy Wassel. And I mean, what I liked about Kathy Wassel was that she could teach special ed the lowest level, she could teach the highest AP and be equally as effective.
And she has been teaching continuously for 50.
This is her
55.
51st, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if it was 51st or 52nd,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but she is still teaching, will be teaching this year. She's only going to be teaching one class, but she's still doing it.
Speaking of controversies, I have just two more and jump in, but I was also involved in a controversy with the John Birch Society very early on. They had headquarters here.
Let freedom ring.
What?
Let freedom ring, right? They had a phone line in town.
So anyway, Hal Lilly gave me the lowest level special ed English class of all boys, 25 boys. She said, Darla, I don't care what you do, just don't bother me.
Oh, no.
So I ordered the Daily News. They weren't going to have the New York Times. I ordered Carmack. I mean, what we did in that class, we did learn. They found out. They wanted me fired. I mean, they came and observed. After they observed, when I saw my journal, but I mean, they were one big frightening group. Now, did you have run-ins with them?
No, I just kind of remember my parents, complaining about them. My dad was on the school board for a while, in probably the early 60s, and
They
he
were
got run off,
Yeah.
and part of it, he had worked his whole career in the publishing industry, textbook publishing, and part of what ran him off, I believe, was allegations that, he works for a textbook publisher, he's, getting on the school board so he can get, Ridgefield to buy their books or something.
And the last one was more middle school than
Wasn't there
it
something about hanging a dog? So the head of the teachers union's
That's
dog
not
got
the-
hung or something?
That's not the John Birch Society, that was the
Taxpayers.
people against Soul on Ice and police courts in the ghetto and the book burning period during the late 60s, early 70s that gained national attention.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the John Birch Society, that was just very conservative parents who didn't want certain kinds of books their children exposed to certain kinds of books.
Yeah, and the last controversy that Hal and I remembered had to do with the typing teacher, Nancy Seaford. And that went on and on forever. And after she finally won her case, she had good evaluations from one principal and not from another. And she went back to teach, and she lasted, a week or two, and then resigned after all this attention and lawyer fees and everything.
What were they trying to fire her for? I remember that.
Incompetence, right?
Yeah, it was incompetence, and they moved her. The student population was dropping at the high school level, and so she was moved down to East Ridge, and they thought maybe that would get her out because 8th graders and 7th graders were much harder to control than the older kids, but she was down there, and I guess she did okay, but then she decided, I didn't know when she actually decided to leave.
I remember that dragging on for months, and Nancy's had hearings.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of this.
Well, I'm going to go back to the 50s. There were no controversies back then.
Must have been nice.
We knew about.
What the teacher said is what we did, and you didn't go home and tell your parents about it, because they would side with the teachers in most cases, okay?
Yeah.
We had teachers, and some of your parents, well, not my parents, because they didn't live here, had the same teachers
Yeah.
as the parents had.
Miss Burdick.
Miss Burdick,
Miss
Mr.
Wills.
Mr. Holleran.
Yeah.
We went from first grade to 12th, all up at the high school, at the old high school now. And it was just a progression of going from this side of the bottom part of the building, then you moved up grade by grade till you got to the end near the police station on your 12th grade. And that was, well, you thought you were pretty good when you hit that 9th grade wall and moved up to high school. There were no controversies, believe me. Most of our teachers have been there for years and years. As a matter of fact, I remember an algebra teacher that I had asked a question in the class, and he asked one of the students, a boy, and the boy just said, "Oh, I don't know what that is." He couldn't come up with it, whatever. The teacher turned around to the blackboard, took the eraser, and flung it right at him.
Wow.
Hit him right in the head. Nobody said a word.
Kurt Pickup,
Pardon me?
the teacher, Kurt Pickup.
No.
He was known for throwing the erasers.
That's later though.
And we
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I didn't know when Kurt had started teaching.
And we were all terrified, but nobody said anything. Made sure you did your homework and knew what he was asking the next day.
Yeah.
We had some very dear teachers from the 40s to the
Very
50s.
Of course, we had smaller classes too. I graduated in '54 and had
Right.
39 in my graduating class.
How many people would be in a typical, like, English class? How many people would be in that room?
Maybe 20.
20, maybe
Yeah.
20.
Maybe
So
20.
that's, yeah, that's
But not
great.
less than. Yeah, we had at least 20.
Yeah, we had
We
at
had,
least. There were like 2 teachers for every grade. Like first grade, there were 2 teachers.
Yeah, like
Second
a lot of
grade?
the grades, there were 2 teachers.
Yes.
And of course, being kids, we thought our teachers were just ancient, all of them. And at our last class reunion last year, it was like somebody had gone and researched back in 1950 how old a lot of our regular teachers were. And we were astounded to think that they were only 50 years old, and we have children 50 years old now. And, of course, we thought they were ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have that same feeling. One of my favorite teachers when I was going through the high school was a history teacher, John Studich.
Oh, I remember him.
You remember him?
Oh, wonderful man.
And he was from the South, but he was. I got A's and A pluses in that class because I really wanted to learn and the history of this and that. And he was one of my favorite teachers, and I know
Wasn't
you
he a former monk? Or,
And he always aligned with Liz
I never
Arnett.
heard about that, but yeah, Liz Arnett
Liz and John.
and
Yeah.
John. Liz is still around,
Yeah.
but John passed a while ago.
We had a legend in high school. One of the teachers that I think was before us was Miss Wills. She taught seniors. What was it?
Latin.
Latin.
Yeah.
She stood a little bit shorter than me, and that's pretty short. And she came across to some of the toughest guys in that high school that you wouldn't believe. She'd take them by their collar, and she'd drag them into the classroom, and there was no back talk, and everybody was terrified of her.
Right.
And she taught for many years. I think my
She
father-in-law had her.
Terrifying.
Right.
And our principal, Mr. Holleran, had the most booming voice you ever want to hear. When he came down the hallway and he called your name, boy, you ran so fast, it wasn't funny.
But he was so lovable.
He was.
Yeah.
And he was a
Mr.
coach
Crouchley,
for-
his assistant.
Right, for some of the sports teams too.
Taught our father basketball and
Well, we respected all the
Yes,
teachers.
we respected,
Yeah.
you didn't dare.
We didn't, yes.
You didn't dare.
And Miss Wills, as short as she was and how afraid everybody was of her, she taught Latin for years. She would walk up and down the aisles, and she had hairpin, the old hairpins in her hair, holding it in place. And as she was deaf besides, and she would walk up and down the aisles, and her hairpins would fall out and like ping on your desk.
I don't remember
So, oh my gosh, and everybody would be, containing themselves because they knew if you got in trouble with Miss Wills. Yeah.
But how about the Boland sisters?
Boland
Oh,
sisters.
yes.
Oh, my
Yeah, a
God.
couple
May
of
and
lot of
Beth.
sister
There was
combinations.
Yes, we had
downstairs Miss Boland and upstairs Miss Boland. Yeah. They were pretty terrible. They were pretty terrifying.
They were little too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, and then we had the Regan sisters.
Yeah, we had the Regan
all the
sisters. We
Regan
had
sisters.
sister combinations.
A lot of sister combinations.
I'd like to pay tribute to Bob McDonald. I thought he was so far ahead of his time as far as women. He had 7 daughters. He's still alive. He's like 98 years old. He's at Ridgefield Crossings. He's doing fairly well. And when I came to Ridgefield in the 60s, the job was between myself and another woman. And we could hear the people discussing inside. It was Bob and 2 other principals I will not mention. And they were very much in favor of the other woman. She was single. She was older. She was established. She had a solid track record. But most importantly, she was not married. She was not going to have children. And I could hear Bob McDonald standing up, and he said, we want what's best for the students. This is not criteria. And they kept saying, yeah, but Darla's young. Her husband's going to get transferred. She's going to have more kids. She's not stable. We don't want her. Anyway, Bob won out, and I got the job. And when Bob and I see each other today, he still says to me, Darla, you had any more kids? Did you ever move from town? I mean, but that's how men were at the time. It was definitely a man's world. All the administrators were men. It took a long time. I was allowed to be an administrator on an acting basis, interim. I was not allowed to have a permanent job or apply for it.
Well, when I went to Veterans Park, the principal was Isabel O'Shea.
Oh, yeah. She was ours too.
And
No
the
nonsense
auditorium
there.
at the middle school.
She was terrific.
But no nonsense.
No.
She had taught
She
6th
was
grade
very
before.
strict.
She was one of the 6th grade teachers before she became.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Miss Hurst and Miss O'Shea.
Well,
Miss
Far-
Hurst and Miss Reagan, one of the, I guess you said they were sisters. I just remember
Yes.
the one I had.
Mary and Betty.
Yeah.
Mr. Hearn lived up there, yeah.
Yeah, she was, no, I had Miss Carol, 'cause she was a 1st grade teacher.
I think we should mention also St. Mary's School, the parochial school
Sure.
as well.
I'm not there.
Maybe the Shan girls. Did you go?
Oh, yeah, we walked,
Mine
we
was
lived on Main Street, we walked there
Maybe you
every
could
day.
tell us a little, because that started in the around 50.
Well, Joe, my husband Joe went there when it was in the clubhouse.
Brian too.
Oh, right.
Oh, you were there too?
In the clubhouse, yeah.
Okay.
A couple of years.
So that, he was born in 47, so that would have been like 50.
52, 53.
53.
Yeah.
I think the building opened in 55, around there.
Okay, yeah, it's about right.
And we all went through the 8th grade until they closed it.
Right.
Some of our younger kids that ended up going to Danbury, to St. Joseph's. I don't remember what year that was. Betsy?
I don't know.
Around
And then it
71
reopened
or
again.
70.
Yeah.
I remember there was a controversy about the busing and whether
Yes.
the taxpayers should pay for busing
The busing.
the Catholic school kids to their school. And I believe the school board people said, look, it'd be cheaper to pay for the busing than to have that school close and all of them come to the
Right,
public
yeah,
school.
yeah.
And we have to build another school.
That's what happened, yeah.
That's what
They say
happened.
we'd be busing them anyway, yeah, if they were in our school.
I'd also like to pay tribute to Joni Voss, because she started the alternative school. And that took a lot of work and a lot of vision, and she saw the need for a certain population to have this, and it's still going. and
Yeah,
it's
is it
still
so?
successful
Yeah.
because of one strong English teacher at the high school.
Now, is that out at the high school now? It's part of or is it still in the park?
I think it's still.
No, it's back there.
It's in the park.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
They want to be separate, and it works
Right.
better that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very important to her, to have it away from the high school.
And then also Robert Rowe, when they hired him as musical director or
Oh,
teacher
yeah,
at the
he
high
was, yeah.
school, he brought so much innovation, and we have a wonderful music department now, and all
Yeah.
because he started it back in the 50s.
Would write all the music for all the shows.
Oh,
and-
Mr. Rock?
Yeah.
Remember Miss Whitlock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did she teach?
Music.
Music?
We had Miss Whitlock, remember her?
I
We
don't
had
know.
her and Mr. Rowe.
And Miss Randall was the other music teacher? Big
No,
black
we
lady?
didn't have her.
No, we didn't have
Oh, yeah.
And we own, and
She was a
two
character.
physical,
Oh, yeah.
phys ed coaches, Coach
Sylvia?
Allen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Sullivan.
Randall.
Yeah.
She was very nice.
One
Yeah,
took
very.
the girls, one took the
She became
boys.
Hodge.
Miss
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Good.
Mrs. Hodge.
Good memory.
Janie Larson also wrote me when I asked about coming to the meeting, and she said that one of the programs she most enjoyed, and it lasted for about 10 or 12 years, the two of us worked with Ridgefield Crossing, and she would teach about World War II, and then we would go and work with the vets there. And it was just so good. Veteran women and men, the interviews, the essays, the celebration, the reading excerpts. It worked so well, but no teacher was willing to pick it up after Janie, and we also ran out of veterans and many of the other veterans. But programs like this are just so important, and we also worked with Doris Ventris in working with writing to veterans and
All right.
community-based interactive programs like this. I remember B.G. Brown had her students go to each of the small businesses in town and get their history and put a book together on the history. These are the projects that kids remember, not the lectures.
Now, what was there was some issue that kind of got the relationship between the schools and the veterans going, where initially the veterans were mad about something.
Veterans Day.
Yeah, right.
Having
'Cause
school
they
on
had
Veterans
school on Veterans Day, and Bob Tumpani was the head of the
Right.
Yeah.
We-
that's
veterans group, the American Legion, and they went to a school board meeting and they were all mad, but
And that's
it
recent.
kind of evolved, and the schools
Yeah.
responded
Yeah.
by having a lot of. Not only did they no longer have school on Veterans Day after that,
Right.
but they had a lot of programs where on Veterans Day they would bring veterans in and they would
Yeah.
talk to the kids about
Yep.
their experiences in the
I
war.
remember in the high school, they would have the veterans come and talk to the kids there,
Yeah.
and that was, it
They
was
still
moving.
do it.
Yeah,
They still
it
go.
was good stuff
Yeah.
that came from what was initially like a fight.
Right.
Right.
One more thing that has changed, particularly at the high school, and that's industrial arts and, I mean, when they opened the new high school on North Salem Road, they developed a really nice industrial arts program. I remember Geisler,
Geisler, Nessel,
Nessel.
John Nessel,
yeah,
Ron Strand.
Ron Strand. Yeah.
and auto mechanics,
Yeah.
and
They-
practical things that, and what was the name of the wonderful woman who ran the
Oh, Grace Kaprowitz.
yes.
And Dot Lang ran the
Yes.
preschool, and
Oh, yeah.
and Grace Kaprowitz did all of the home ec cooking and baking and sewing. They were
Practical
wonderful
things.
programs.
I say this to people all the time when I do handyman work now, and I've redone all 3 of my bathrooms, my kitchen. I've built a shed, a pergola, did patio work. I did all this because of those classes. I loved working with wood. I still do, and it was so sad. I would go to some of the board meetings, Board of Education meetings, when they were talking about getting rid of it. Ken Freeston was one of the, I think he was superintendent
yeah.
at the time. And it was so sad because the kids lose that ability if they were interested, and people were saying, well, they could just go to Abbott Tech,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they wouldn't know because they weren't experienced.
And
with
it wasn't just about making that a profession. It was about having that knowledge in your life.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot
Yeah,
of what you
that's
learn
so
in math
true.
and those other subjects, you
Right.
never use in
Exactly.
your professions, but it helps you in daily living. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Mr.
what
Fra-
high school has
Mr. Frapsley
lost.
at the
I
Boys
think.
Club had a wonderful woodworking program.
Yes, he did.
That's where a lot of kids made a lamp or made.
I had a nephew who graduated a couple of years ago from Ridgefield High School, and he went to automotive school. He graduated doing well, but his view of it is that the guidance counselors up at the high school, unless you're really going to college, a four-year college, then truly not interested in helping. They don't really talk to you, tell you what's available. So
You're on
this
your
group,
own.
this group of children who really don't want to go to four-year are out there by themselves.
Right. They're neglected.
Because
Without
we
dir-
need,
without
but we
direction,
need to include them. The guidance counselors, I feel, need to somehow help that group of children. Because as you said, not everyone is, we need plumbers, we need
Yeah.
carpenters, we
Yeah.
need,
Electricians,
Yeah.
we need.
And they don't always know when they start high school that that's what they want.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of those people are making better money. than-
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
When-
Six-year college graduates, yes.
When I was
Yes.
at the new high school, I took a class in electrical work, and I learned how to wire, and I took the wood shop a couple of years. I took metal shop, where we learned how to do metal work and heat the metal and then pour it into a mold.
Soldering.
Soldering, yeah, all those things.
So
Yeah,
important.
not that we would be doing
And
metal work, but
What Pete also did, and he's so humble, he started recycling at the high school. He started composting at the high school. He started herb gardens, and I don't know how many other things. Again, hands-on, real-life experiences for kids that were wonderful.
It really connects kids too. I think some of these things like Mrs. Kaprowitz's cooking,
right.
one of our sons, that was what kept him interested, was that connection.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion today. I think we're just about at our time at the top of the hour. Does anyone have any final comments? I think this is a good place to wrap up for today. Thank you all for joining us, and mark your calendars for our next gathering of the History Club, Tuesday, September 19th at 10 o'clock right here in the Scott House. Thank you so much.
Thank you.